and hence the quarry came into existence here. There's also a lot of servants in Letham to do with Mill House. You find loads and loads of servants. Even my house had a servant. All the big houses round about had servants, and again, these people in Letham. Strangely enough, an awful lot of retired people in Letham in the 19th century as well. Shops really come into their own in the late 19th century. There are a whole pile of shops in Letham that we know about. With the wee list here, there's the post office, which is in David Hamilton's old house. If you look very carefully at David Hamilton's house, you can actually see where the post box has been bricked up. I will point it out in the photograph to you. So the next time I will stare at David's house and you'll actually find where the post box was. You've got 2 or 3 grocers in Letham, and they're all down the road. You've got a shoemaker in Letham by the name of Norrie. Again, you'll find bills to the shoemaker there. And you've got joiners, and also you've got blacksmiths in Letham. But the shops that came into existence are kind of similar to our shops. Now I'm going to show you a photograph of one of the shops. A very good photograph taken by the guy in my house. This photograph is the one at the top of the Welsh. It's the house that's for sale today that used to belong to Mrs. James. The one is called Sunny Bank. It's been horrendously altered. You'll see it was owned by 2 people called the Miss Spences, and it was a general merchant licensed to sell tobacco. It was just a Johnny Authen type shop here. You went in here, you can see the shutters going over the windows here to close the windows up at night. Unfortunately, this house has been very, very badly altered. In the 1950s, it had a horrible great big picture windows put in. But again, if you look at it like that, it's a very, very charming house. And if you see the construction of it, it possibly might date back to the very late 18th century. It's a random rubble construction again. The building at the back here as well, you can just see in the roof, does not exist at all today. But again, that employed quite a lot of people. It was a maltings. Now that is the site of Zoe Interiors today. Now as a boy, that building was still in existence, although it was kind of ruinous. But again, I'm going to show you quite good photographs of this maltings, and again, it employed quite a lot of people here. So that's what the houses would, the shops would look like in Letham in the late 19th century. 4 or 5 of them in the village. There were actually 2 or 3 general merchants, 2 or 3 grocers there as well. I think I told you about the Letham Flower Show, and the Reverend James Brunton did not like all this drunkenness that went on. One thing that he did do was, though, he instituted the Brunton Medal for the Ducks of Letham School. That is still in existence today, but for some reason will not give out this medal because they're regarded as being a little bit, I don't know, privileged or something like that. But I actually won the Brunton Medal. And I used to put in my application forms that I'd won the Ducks Medal of Letham Public School, because it was called a public school. When I applied to university, I said I won the Ducks Medal in Letham Public School. But the real story is, there was only 2 people in primary 7, and in these days, the student people, I went to the A class, and the other guy went to the remedial class, or the H class. So there was 0 competition. I love the photograph of me with the Brunton Medal there. If we move on to the 20th century now, another interesting event happened in World War II. The Letham was bombed. There were bombs went off at the top of Mark and Sue's house in the top of the garden, where incendiary bombs went off there. There were bombs that went off in the field at Nisbetfield Farm, high explosive bombs. There were bombs that went off down near Melville Lodge's, high explosive bombs. You can still see some of the crater marks today. There's a farmer outside Cooper, I've forgotten his name lost offhand, who has a bit of one of these bombs, and he's always promising to give me it, but you can never find it, and he's steady, this little bit of rusty metal. The story that was put about as a boy was, it was a stray bomber coming back from Clydebank or Glasgow on its way to Norway, and it just jetsoned a load of bombs. That's not the real story at all. It came out fairly recently that Melville House was going to be the headquarters of the Scottish resistance in World War II. If England had been invaded by the Nazis in 1940, then the kind of resistance up here would have been coordinated from Melville House. And that's why when the quarry people are going in there today, they've actually got an architectural historian who's coming in to look at the whole place, because there are a series of tunnels under the house in Mill House that were kept as great big storerooms. I mean, they're definitely there because I've actually been in some of them underneath the house there. And the chances are this bomber was actually trying to hit Melville House to try and knock it out. You know, it's too much of a coincidence to drop a stick of bombs in Letham. You know, there must have been a reason for it, and I think that was the reason for it. Final bit I'm going to show you something. It's the actual hall here. This hall was not built until the early 1950s. And the original hall was in Barry and Teresa's house, and it was called the Free Gardeners' Hall. It was in existence until about 1952, 1953, something like that, when this hall was built, and that hall was closed down, because it's a very, very small hall. I've got a nice photograph that I'm going to sell to Barry later on, showing you the actual hall. There was a party in this hall. This is Barry and Teresa's house. They've known Barry will bash it all down. This is we've got to get this. I think we're right here properly. This is a party in Letham Hall, in the Free Gardeners' Hall, about 1948. Even before I was born, it's 1948. This very dapper gentleman here coming down here is actually Captain Dallas, my father, clean out of the army and obviously still trying to look a little bit military with that moustache. That's Isaac Drummond, who died fairly recently. Now, maybe later on, I don't know who these children are, but maybe somebody could tell me who these children are, because they must be local Letham children. I have no idea who anything are at all, or even who Santa is. But that is the old Free Gardeners' Hall. Now, that was part one of the talk. Part two of the talk is a lot better. I'm going to take you on a virtual tour of Letham round about the time 1890-1900. We're going to start off at Letham Toll, and we're going to work our way through Letham to show you what Letham looked like about 1890. The photographs are all taken by the guy who lived in my house, this chap called R.J.P. Spence. You might see some of his names coming up. Very good quality photographs. You will recognise your house in these photographs. Now, the first photograph is Letham Toll, about 1890. It's instinctively recognisable as Letham Toll. But if you notice the road, it's a non-metal road, it's a mud road. There's no tar and carbon on that road at all. Notice how narrow it is. There's a roadman working there, and it appears that he's actually draining a ditch. This house here, which is now demolished, was the Toll house that was built about 1790, that particular house. It was knocked down to improve the vision a little bit. You can see here, there's a pump here as well. There's pumps all over Letham, loads and loads of pumps. I mean, there's only the one that is left now is the one that's at the top of the road. There's pumps all over the place. But what I find quite interesting is, if you notice the gates here, these are not normal farmers' gates. Now, if Letham Toll went out of existence about 1860, and this photograph was taken about 1890, I think it's highly possible these are the original toll gates that were put across the road. They're painted white. You don't get farmers painting white gates. They can't be bothered with things like that. So I think it's highly possible that these are the original gates that were just simply shunted to the side when the toll was abolished about 1860. The other interesting thing is, where Letham Park is today, the ground is fairly raised up there. And again, I think it's very, very marshy down the park there. I think it was deliberately raised up. Okay? So that's the toll. Now, if we move on up a little bit, we'll see Bruce and Juliet's house. And we'll see a picture of Bruce. You see him? Yes. That's Bruce about 1890. Good picture about say 1890. No tarmac pad at all on the road. The path going all the way up here. This path was like that when I was a boy. And I remember quite distinctly whenever they put the kerbing in. They put the kerbing in first and they just left the path. And then about 10, 15 years later, they then tarmacked the path. But that's what it was like. But interesting enough, there's also a path going up the other side here. And you see the path going up, there are two paths going up here. The farmhouse here, the existing farmhouse today, was not built till 1860. And there's the steading that was knocked down about 1970, the original steading. In this particular, this is the, remember the area I told you about where the Letham show took place? That's the area there where the Manson's house is, and where where the Reeby's house is today. That way for the actual Letham show. Just down below it, which is actually filled today, is a stackyard in Letham. That's where they made all the stacks. I'm going to show you a good photograph of the stacks actually made about 1870, 1880. So that was a stackyard. You go up here, there are the twin trees that I told you about, the well trees today, right in the village green. There's a pub, you can just make out the Mill Arms here. Continue up the west end, there's my house. Now, opposite my house, where Matthew Kidd's house is today, if you look at the wall in the front of Matthew Kidd's house, you will see nice coping stone that goes along for half the wall, then the coping stone stops. And the reason why was, this house was an old dairy, and it was built up. And when they demolished it, about 1920, 1930, they just simply left the wall of the house to actually just for the wall. So you'll find no coping stone, but you can still see the wall of this house today, right in front of Matthew Kidd's house here. There's no park obviously here because the park was not built until the 1930s. I don't know what that area was used for. They didn't continue building down here because of the marsh. It was too marshy. If you ever played about in the park, you'll find it's very, very marshy at the bottom. So they stopped the building at Bruce and Juliet's house here. Whole pile of people having a chat, washing out on the hedge here to try and dry. It might well have been common ground. It might well have been. I don't know that, but you're right. The next photograph is slightly out of sequence, chronologically. It's a bit later, it's about 1920, but I thought I'd put it in since we're in this particular area. This is quite a famous photograph of the new row in Letham. And this photograph is about 1920. Here's Bruce and Juliet's house, no dogs at all at the window. This was the joiner's house in Letham, Ingles the joiner. You know all the benches that I set up for the Letham Flower Show and carry every single year, and were able to assist by Andrew and Willie and Company Barry doesn't often turn up. They were all made in this workshop by Ingles the joiner. Again, you'll find bills from my house to Ingles the joiner. But this is the interesting one here. You know the Drimples house today, this incongruous two-storey building? Well, it was owned by the Storers. They were up in David Hamilton's house up here. They moved down here. And instead of having an emporium, a general shop, they set up a cycle agents and a garage. Again, I'm going to show you a very good picture of it. You'll see there's a sign for Pratt's Petrol, because they sold petrol here. It started off as a one-storey house. They knocked down the original 19th century house about, I don't know, 1920, something like that, and replaced it with what they thought was a more modern and more suitable house for the shop. And of course, after the war, 1950, something like that, the Drimples then added on the second storey onto the top. And that's why that house looks so out of place in the road today. But it was just simply a business venture in the 1920s. This house here, the two-storey house, I don't know anything about this house. I don't know how it exists like that. It's obviously a lot later than the row, but I'm guessing 1860, 1870. I don't know why that house was built there. I think it's highly possible there was a gap there, there was common grazing ground in there that for some reason was taken over. You can tell it's a bit later because of the telegraph poles in existence. You can tell it's 1920 so when the telephone came to Letham and the telegraph poles were done. But interestingly again, there is no tar macadam in that road, even though it's about 1920 and there's no tar macadam on the pavement, anything like that. Now I'll show you a more detailed view of this house. This is the house I just showed you, the Drimples house, about 1920. This man here, I used to know him, that's Tommy Malone, who lived in Letham all his life, and he worked for Stewart's. He was very good at repairing radios and so on. He had one of the very few cars in Letham. That's him learning his trade in here at Storer's Cycles. You can see why they demolished the old 19th century house, because they wanted the big picture windows to show the bicycles. And if you look at the style of the bike, you can tell straight away it's about 1920, something like that. They've actually got a Pratt's petrol pump here, and Pratt's petrol pump that you can turn on the petrol is. They've got signs all over the walls advertising bicycles and advertising cars. So it's the Letham garage. And I think it continued up until probably about World War II, until the Drinkles took over and came to join our shop. It was the joiners from Letham for a considerable number of years, and all the equipment is still there. You can see quite distinctly, if you look at the side of it, it's this bit where it's keyed in to the other house next door. And of course, the second story was fitted in the 1950s. Now we're moving up the road a little bit here. That's this house I don't know much about. That's your homework actually for next time we do this and find out all about this house. That pub was in existence when I was a boy, halfway down the road, but it's completely and utterly disappeared now, I don't know why. This photograph is again about 1890, 1900. No metal road at all, nothing in the pavements, anything like that. No generally Letham. You see the twin oak trees there again, and you can't see the pub because of that tree there. Nice photograph that one. Lovely photograph, this one. A bit earlier, I think it's about 1870, 1880, judging by the clothes. And this is the stackyard. I told you the stackyard is on the west side of the road, down a bit from the Manson's house. It's still the field today. That's where they built the stacks. One of these guys is a farmer in Letham. I have no idea who. But it shows you the number of people involved in the harvest, and getting in the harvest and building all the stacks in Letham. You'll also see, this is where I give everybody around here that lives in a row. The houses all look very original and charming. There's not one single original house in the row. They've all had the windows completely altered. They should have these 12-pane early 19th century windows. That's your right over. But that's how it looked like. This house here, there are shops here. Again, I'll show you a photograph of the shops.